Did you know that the fifth biggest country in the world became a dictatorship and the international press doesn't even seem to care? I'll show you exactly how it happened. And believe me, it happened here in Brazil and will probably happen in your country as well. Because dictatorships now, they have a new way of being created. It's not by tanks on the streets or military shooting guns at random people. No. The new dictatorships, at least in the Western civilization, the Western democratic countries, are being born under the guise of fighting for democracy. Yeah, believe it or not. This is how they did it in Brazil. And that's exactly how they're doing in other countries like United Kingdom, Canada, France, many other countries. But if you give me a few minutes, I will show you exactly what happened to Brazil. And maybe you will have enough information to prevent it from happening in your country. Because the way it is here now, we are doomed. My name is Gustavo Gaia. I am a federal congressman in Brazil. And like dozens of other federal congressmen and senators, we are at the risk of being arrested any moment now. A few months ago, I had the federal police invading my house by the order of one justice of the Supreme Court. And that's where I want to get. The new dictatorships now in the world, they are ruled by lawfare, by Supreme Courts. Venezuela, this is exactly how they're doing. Maduro kidnapped the Supreme Court and uses the Supreme Court to give a certain guise of democratic country, when we all know it is not. But Brazil fell in the same trap. You've probably heard by now, if you like to follow international politics, you've probably heard one of the biggest scandals in Brazil recently. This justice in Brazil, the Supreme Court, has just accused former President Bolsonaro of trying to take over control of Brazil under a coup d'etat. It was headline news all over the world. Well, if I tell you that that's exactly the opposite of what happened. Bolsonaro tried to save our democracy, but unfortunately, the Supreme Court, with the help of international fundings from USAID and other American agencies, wasn't able to defeat them. So, right now, Bolsonaro has just been accused by our Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. You probably heard that name. He's the guy trying to censor everyone in Brazil who took down X and threatening to take down every single social platform. A guy who put in prison people for their opinions but releases drug dealers and murderers and corrupt people. So they created this narrative to say that Bolsonaro tried to take over, to do a coup d'etat in Brazil. And they are using for this accusation the collaboration, the testimony of one person, a person who worked with Bolsonaro. His name is Mauro Cid. Mauro Cid is the main witness or the main collaborator of the whole narrative that the Supreme Court in Brazil is trying to use to arrest Bolsonaro and other 33 people who were in government with former President Bolsonaro. But there's just one problem. Mauro Cid has been psychologically tortured, threatened, and not only him, de Moraes threatened his family, father, wife, and daughter, to make him say exactly what he wanted to hear in order to create the narrative. So let me show you the timeline a little bit. This is one of the most famous, or at least most credible, news outlet in Brazil, Folha de São Paulo. It says, Moraes approves plea bargain agreement and orders release of Mauro Cid, Bolsonaro's former aide. So Mauro Cid, former aide of Bolsonaro, was arrested for stupid crimes that de Moraes created, like forging vaccination cards. But de Moraes arrested him with only one reason, one goal, to torture him psychologically in order to get him to say exactly what de Moraes wanted, to create the narrative to arrest Bolsonaro. So, after 11 collaborations, 11 testimonies, after being threatened, he finally gave his testimony, right? But there's two things I would like to show you. This is Mauro Cid. Remember, his testimony is the backbone of the accusation. He was arrested for some time, and then de Moraes accepted his plea bargain and let him go home. once he got home, he sent a message to a friend of his saying this, and now this is the scandal you need to pay attention.
Eles já estão com a narrativa pronta. Eles não queriam saber a verdade. Eles queriam só que eu confirmasse a narrativa deles. Entendeu? É isso que eles queriam. E toda vez eles falavam, mas a sua colaboração tá muito boa. Você vai ser... Tipo assim, ele até falou, vacina, por exemplo, você vai ser indiciado por 9 negócios de vacina, 9 tentativas de falsificação de vacina, vai ser indiciado por associação criminosa e mais um termo lá. Ele falou assim, só essa brincadeira são 30 anos para você. Eu vou dizer, o que eu senti. Eles já estão com a narrativa pronta deles, é só fechar, e eles querem o máximo possível de gente para confirmar a narrativa deles. Eles são a lei agora. A lei já acabou há muito tempo. A lei é eles. Eles são a lei. O Alexandre de Moraes é a lei.
Alexandre de Moraes, the Supreme Court Justice who wants to take down Bolsonaro and give perpetual power to the left in Brazil. This is what he said after some months of being arrested and psychologically tortured. Alexandre de Moraes is the law. Now I'm going to show you a video. It was the interrogation. This is Alexandre de Moraes, this one over here. And right here you have Mauro Cid. Mauro Cid, remember, is the backbone of the whole accusation. They are trying to arrest Bolsonaro, taking in consideration solely the testimony of Mauro Cid. And they are trying to construct other narratives, but the main path, the main narrative is from this guy. Now here you will see Alexandre de Moraes threatening Mauro Cid with his father's, mother's and daughter's arrest.
A fim de possibilitar uma reflexão maior do colaborador com seus advogados, para que esclareça omissões, contradições na sua colaboração, sob pena não só da decretação de prisão, como também da cessação da consequente rescisão da colaboração, e eventual rescisão englobará inclusive a continuidade das investigações e responsabilização do pai do investigado, de sua esposa e de sua filha maior.
So, this moment right here, that's the scandal that is being taking over the political debate in Brazil. It's a guy who has been psychologically tortured. For 11 times he needed to change his testimony until De Moraes got exactly what he wanted. And that only happened after De Moraes threatened to arrest his father, wife, and daughter. Now, this is a human rights violations in every aspect you can look at it, right? I just sent a file to the Inter-American Committee of Human Rights to analyze this case. But they are using this to arrest the biggest political leader that Latin America has ever seen. And that leader is Bolsonaro. If that wasn't enough, this is where things get really strange. The PGR, this is the prosecution, the federal prosecution, omitted statements by Mauro Cid that contrast with the complaint against Bolsonaro. So basically, they got the testimony and they deleted parts that proved the contrary of what they are trying to accuse Bolsonaro. Have you seen that? Does that happen in your country? Not in yours, maybe, but it happens in Venezuela, in North Korea, it happens in Cuba, it happens in China. Like I said, video shows Moraes' threat of arrest to Cid during testimony watch. Not only Cid, but his father, his mother, and his daughter. Now, this is how the new dictatorships are being implemented. They are not using military or weapons. No, they are silencing. They are scaring the opposition. They are arresting people for their opinion, always using that narrative of fighting hate speech, of defending democracy. The same thing that happens in the United Kingdom, in Canada, it is happening in Brazil, but the thing is, Brazil is far ahead. We already are a dictatorship. I had the federal police, at least that part of the federal police that we call here the Gestapo of Moraes, invading my house, raided my house, and raided houses of many other federal congressmen, senators from the opposition that don't accept Lula's or who are fighting Lula's rule. So De Moraes is like the operator of dictatorship, and Lula is the big boss. And Brazil is no longer a democracy. Now they are trying, and they are going to, at least they want to, put Bolsonaro in prison. You know why? Because the latest polls show that Bolsonaro would win for the president of Brazil. So they need to arrest him in order to keep Lula in power. That's the democracy that we are living under. And here, if you complain about it, if you ask questions, you go to prison. Always with investigations that never end, supposedly using fake news narratives and trying to defend the democracy. If it's happening in Brazil, it could happen in your country as well. So fight it. Don't let it go as far as it has reached in Brazil.